This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm your host, Mac Pritchard. I'm also the founder of Mac's List. It's a job board in the Pacific Northwest that helps you find a fulfilling career. Every Wednesday, I talk to a different expert about the tools you need to get the work you want. Every job has good days and bad days, but some jobs leave you exhausted every day. What do you do if this happens to you? Candyce Hunt is here to talk about how to recognize and overcome career burnout. She's a career strategist, a speaker, and a co-founder of the 5-Minute Career Hack. It's a podcast and a coaching company that helps you change your career and get the salary you want. She joins us from Austin, Texas. Well, let's jump right into it, Candyce. What is career burnout? How do you define that?
This is one of the topics that, unfortunately, I get to talk about a lot, but it's not my favorite topic, but certainly relevant for the times that we are in now. But career burnout for us and how we define it when working with clients is a state or a continuous state of chronic stress. You've been stressed out for prolonged periods of time, and your body, your mental, your emotions go into a automatic shutdown because you are doing all of the wrong things or unsatisfied in your career. So burnout is when your body saves itself. It stops itself. It stops you from doing all the things that are causing you anxiety, depression, fatigue. It stops you and puts you in reserve mode so that you can preserve life.
So you're in a situation with a lot of stress. It's prolonged, and your body starts shutting down. What are the signs that this is happening? What kind of symptoms do people experience when they're in career burnout?
Yeah, great question. So, and the reason I like to talk about this is because sometimes people are experiencing these signs and they either ignore them or they think something is wrong with them or they just don't know what to do next. So I'm going to definitely name a few just to resonate with the audience. But sometimes you're just feeling low energy. You're not feeling motivated. You are always fatigued. This is where, again, it's about your body. Your body is going to tell you when you are experiencing burnout. So if you're experiencing prolonged headaches, muscle tension, increased feelings of frustration, trouble sleeping, if you find yourself sometimes abusing substances or overeating and worrying about work when you're not at work, these are just some of the signs that you might be experiencing burnout. And I always love to talk about a time where I felt it after years of overworking. I was sitting in my car and all of a sudden I just could not breathe. I was having a panic attack and absolutely nothing was going on. And in that moment, I thought something was wrong with me. But after talking to a therapist and reaching out to my community, I realized that I had years of built up stress and burnout that was impacting the way that I was performing at home and the way that I was performing on my job. So definitely far more signs, of course, but these are just some of the ones that we see most common that we should be on the lookout for.
How often does career burnout happen in a career? Is it something that we can all expect to experience at one point, or does it really depend on our own circumstances?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's yes and. So yes, it depends on your circumstances and the way that you are setting boundaries for yourself, like again, personally and professionally. But there's a lot of statistics out there, especially that have emerged since the pandemic started. And there was a Gallup survey where they found that 76 of employees experience burnout at least sometimes. And I've seen other varying statistics out there where it's even upwards of 90%, right, depending on your profession. So yes, I believe that most people experience burnout, and some of us are just more educated on what we do when we experience it, or we are just more self-aware of listening to our bodies when we experience it, where we can interrupt it quickly. But again, it gets to that 90% when it's ignored, and then it starts to negatively impact your work.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. If you don't take action, how can career burnout affect both your performance at your job, but eventually on your career itself?
Yeah, so to answer this one, Mac, I want to you just kind of touch on what those three pieces of burnout are. So there's overload burnout, where you are continuing to work at a very unsustainable pace. You're clocking long hours without mental breaks, not taking days off or continuous extended days. I know I had that point in my career. I'm sure someone listening had that, right? But that overload burnout is the one that while you're at work, you're just doing all of the things and sometimes focused on the wrong tasks, right? And then there's the under challenge burnout, which some experience as well. And that's when you're just not being challenged at all or not even being stimulated by your job, right? So then you're not motivated, you're bored, you got 8 hours to do your job, but you only really need four, and you just don't feel like you are productive or have fulfillment, right? And then the third one that I like to talk about is the neglect burnout. And that's just when you don't feel a sense of purpose, right? And you're not engaged in your job. Again, not feeling happy. Doing that just alone is just a little bit difficult. And you don't feel like you are operating in your true passions and purpose. And believe it or not, for many people, they experience this more often than not, where they get to burnout because they just don't feel fulfilled, and they're operating in someone else's purpose, someone else's goals, someone else's definition of what work is, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And I know you've got a three-step process you take your clients through, Candice, to help them deal with career burnout. And the three steps, we're going to walk through them one by one. First is to avoid it altogether. Your second step is to manage it when it happens. And your third is to overcome it. And I want to take the listeners through each of those steps and how you recommend they take action. So let's talk about step number one. It's to avoid career burnout altogether. How do you do this, Candice?
Yes. And again, the statistic is so high, Mac, right? So 76% to 90% of people experiencing burnout. The point of avoidance is almost, if we're close to it being a moot point. But as we think about different generations in the workplace, my biggest piece of advice here is and it's around most emotional intelligence, is be self-aware. It's be self-aware. Listen to your body when you are experiencing some of those signs that I talked about earlier. You have to listen to your body and respond, right? So avoiding burnout for me is just making sure that you are self-aware, that you acknowledge it when things are happening, when you start to experiencing those signs of burnout, and just making sure that you are just partnering with someone, reaching out to your community when you start to have those experience those signs.
So you're paying attention to those signs. You've got the emotional intelligence to do that. You're reaching out to someone in your community. What are you asking for? What action steps are you taking, do you recommend, Candice, to avoid career burnout altogether on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, and this one too, Matt, great question, is just around your values. And so as I talked about the overload and the neglect burnout and the under challenge burnout, we find that most people are experiencing this because they're doing work that's not aligned with their true values and purpose. And so there's a values exercise that anybody who's experiencing burnout, when they come to us, that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with their self-awareness. And then what are your values? And having them walk through an exercise where they narrow it down to their three values. And then now we're going to look at their day in and day out activities in their personal and professional life to understand, is the work that they're doing aligned with their values? And when it's not, that's when they start to experience some of that overload. They experience that neglect, as well as that third burnout that I talked about of being under challenged, that has physiological effects on the way that you move and the way that you do work.
Terrific. I want to dig in a little more about that and what you should do if your values aren't aligned with the job you have today. But let's take a break, Candice. So stay with us. When we come back, Candyce Hunt will continue to share her advice on how to recognize and overcome career burnout. Have you ever been asked this in a job interview? Tell me about a time when you didn't agree with your boss. What would you say? This is what's called a behavioral interview question, and it's a common tactic. Employers use this kind of question to explore your fit for a job based on your past experience. It can be an easy question to answer if you have the right strategy. I show you how to answer these gotcha questions in our free Max List guide, 100 Behavioral Interview Questions You Need to Know. To get your copy, visit maxlist.org/questions. You'll also learn 4 simple steps for answering any behavioral interview question. Again, that's maxlist.org/questions. You can count on getting these questions in your next interview. Why not get the answers before you walk into the interview room? Go to maxlist.org/questions. We're back in the Max List studio. I'm talking with Candyce Hunt. She's a career strategist, a speaker, and a co-founder of the 5-Minute Career Hack. It's a podcast and a coaching company that helps you change your career and get the salary you want. She joins us from Austin, Texas. Now, Candyce, before the break, we were talking about how to recognize and overcome career burnout, and we were walking through a 3-step process you use for people who are experiencing career burnout. And you, at the end of the first segment, you talked about the importance of recognizing your values and making sure that the work you're doing aligns with your values. Candyce, what do you do if you go through that exercise and discover that the job you have today doesn't match up with your values?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first thing is you definitely want to, and I talked about community, but that's when you want to partner with either a life coach, a career coach like 5-Minute Career Hack, so that we can explore ways that we can get you back in alignment. And so again, that's where that values exercise is so important, because then once we understand what your values are, then let's match that up with jobs or career paths that are going to align with that. And it's not, Mac, hey, let's quit your job now, but let's create a strategy. Let's create a strategy that is going to get you back in alignment and still be in tune with all dimensions, where you stand in all dimensions of well-being. So we want to create a strategy that's going to consider your physical health, create a strategy that considers your emotional intelligence, your mental health, and also that includes your financial health, because we want to make sure anybody who walks away from the 5-Minute Career Hack, we want to make sure that, your values as well as the work that we're pushing you towards, that's going to align with your financial stability as well.
Well, let's talk about the second of your 3-part process for managing career burnout when it happens. And you use an acronym here, Candyce, REST, R-E-S-T, for managing career burnout. Let's walk through that. The R in REST stands for restore. What do you have in mind here?
Yes, so definitely, Mac, I like this acronym. And the reason that I use it is because when I experienced burnout, my therapist, her first statement to me was, you just need to rest. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, but as I went through the journey of healing and overcoming burnout, I understood it deeper, and it kind of birthed this acronym. And so restore is just simply taking a pause, evaluating your relationship with stress. Do you naturally go into fight or flight mode? Understanding how you respond, and then just take a breather so that you can be more prepared the next time your body tells you that you're experiencing burnout. So it's taking a break. Take the vacation, check your PTO to see if you have additional time that you can take to just give your body either getting more sleep or giving your body a chance to just have rest, where you're not, like, the art of doing nothing is what I like to call it. The art of doing nothing, so you can give your body a chance to restore.
The E in your REST acronym stands for energize. How can you energize yourself to avoid career burnout, Candyce?
Yes. And so I believe that energy is based off of what you consume. So we consume things by what we hear, by what we see, what we taste, right, and eat, even what you smell as well. So for me, when I advise people on their energy and what they're consuming, I'm having them pay attention to things like what's your social media consumption look like? Are you, or do you have a boundary set around the way you consume social media? What are you eating? Are you eating foods that are very low in complex carbs and causing your energy level to go down, or drinking drinks that cause your energy level to go down? And then also, what are you feeding your mind? Are you taking time to be in meditation? Are you listening to the right podcast, i.e., Max podcast, Find Your Dream Job, or 5 Minute Career Hack? Are you watching Netflix all the time? I think that, mindlessness is important, but we also have to make sure that what we hear is feeding our minds with things that are going to motivate us and give us energy versus things that are going to make us feel more depressed and make us feel more anxious.
The S in rest, your acronym for managing career burnout, represents sleep. And you touched on sleep a moment ago, but how should you manage your sleep, Candice, to avoid career burnout?
Absolutely. And I say this simply, if you go back and listen to episode 38 of our 5 Minute Career Hack podcast, I touched on this one slowly because it probably needs to be a separate one, but I say you need 7 to 9 hours of rest each night to live a healthy and productive life. And end the sentence, right? So if you find yourself saying, oh, I just need 3 to 4 to 5, I'm a 6 hour sleeper and I do well. Each night that you are depriving yourself of the adequate rest, there is no way to go back and make that up. And you're actually taking time off of your life and moving closer to burnout. So the simple answer here, Mac, is 7 to 9 hours of rest every single night in order for you to live a healthy and productive life.
And the last letter in your 4-part acronym of REST is T. It stands for time management. What's the best way to handle your time to avoid career burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for this one, and this is just about prioritizing yourself. And I actually don't even call it time management anymore. I call it time leadership, right? Because we want to be the leaders of our time. And with that, we have to unapologetically prioritize ourselves. When I was in corporate America, one thing that I would encourage my team to do was plot yourself on the calendar first. What does your family time look like? Mac, I even put my sleep on my calendar. What self-care routines do I have? Doctor's appointments. Put your daily breaks on your calendar. If you do any sort of reflection or gratitude, put that on your calendar. But this is the one here that I think surprises people when I say it, is even plot deliberate time on your calendar to do absolutely nothing. Right. And the reason why that's so important is because your brain needs time to recalibrate. It needs time to slow down so that when it's time to ramp back up, you are not burnt out or overloaded, and not able to, even carry out the tasks that are on your priority list. But I think it starts with us and how we lead our time and lead ourselves. That is the catalyst to burnout, I believe.
So again, your 3-part process for overcoming career burnout. Step 1 is to avoid it. Step 2 is manage it. And the third is to overcome it. And let's talk quickly about that third part, Candice. How do you overcome career burnout if you've been unsuccessful in avoiding it or just haven't been able to manage it and it's not going away?
Yes. And I was asked this question recently on a podcast I was on, and it was an interesting answer that I think surprised people. And I share this from testimony of when I was experiencing burnout. I got a life coach and then I had a therapist. My life coach was saying, I need you to go and work out for 30 minutes a day. And then my therapist was saying, I need you to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And so as I explained what the definition of burnout was, it is when your body goes into automatic shutdown mode. So we have to respond to burnout by speaking our body's language, right? And so moving your body and getting rest, that is the way you respond to what your body is telling you. Now, there's other things like make sure that you're meditating, doing deep breathing, creative expression, physical connection, physical touch, talking to other people who you love for at least 30 minutes a day. Those are other things you can do. But again, the best way is to just respond to your body in its own language by moving it, restoring it with rest, and rinse and repeat.
And we talked about this a moment earlier in the show, but when do you know it's time to quit your job? I mean, do you do all these things and including exercise, but what if you're still experiencing burnout? When is it time to move on to the next position?
Yeah, so for me on this one, because burnout is for chronic stress, right? So that's when you're in a state of stress over and over again, and you're not able to release it or improve your relationship with stress. So if you're on that job and you're doing all the things that we are recommending and you still can't find that sense of purpose, you still notice that your values aren't aligned, and you get to that place where it's just like, I'm just still not feeling fulfilled and my body is still tired, then we've already created a strategy for you, right? Or alongside you that helps you to decide, okay, it's time to move on. But my caution is not moving on without that strategy, right? And maybe sometimes the strategy is because you're financially stable or you just have to take a pause. That strategy is to take that pause. Do you need to take a leave of absence before you get ready to quit your job? We want to make sure that you're doing the things that are going to satisfy your well-being, but also not put you in a state of I might I might not make it through life if I remain in this state of burnout. But if you stay in that chronic state of stress and your job is continuing to not fulfill you, then it's time to move on.
Well, it's been a great conversation, Candyce. Now, tell us what's next for you.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of exciting things going on at 5 Minute Career Hack. Actually, I want to just push people and encourage them towards our Career Hacks Masters course. We created a 15 plus module course that walks you through the entire life cycle of employment, from the moment that you create that resume, do that interview, salary negotiation, checking your emotional intelligence. And even if you get to a place of burnout and you're trying to figure out what that exit strategy is, we have a module inside this course that helps you know when it's time to start creating the exit strategy and how you actually negotiate that severance package. So that course is available on our website at $97, where we want to make sure that we give you all the tools to manage the entire life cycle of your employment.
Terrific. Well, we'll be sure to include a link to your website, the 5 Minute Career Hack, and also to your podcast with the same title. And I know that you also encourage listeners to connect with you on LinkedIn, Candyce, and when they do reach out to you, hope they'll mention they heard you on Find Your Dream Job. Now, given all the great advice you've shared today, what's the one thing you want a listener to remember about how to recognize and overcome career burnout?
Yes. So I'm going to give 2 points, and it's a repeat, but I think it's so important for me to share because people listening sometimes either, again, feel like something is wrong with them when they experience burnout. So the first one is listen to your body. Listen to your body. And the second thing I want to leave with others is if you are experiencing burnout, or if those signs come into fruition in your day-to-day life, nothing is wrong with you. I shared the statistic earlier about 76% to 90% of people experience this. So that's the majority, right? So nothing is wrong with you. You don't have to feel ashamed, and you don't have to feel like you are failing at life. This is actually, unfortunately, a normal thing. And there's resources and tools and community out here for you to help you overcome burnout and teach you how to listen to and respond to what your body is telling you about your day-to-day activities.
Make sure you never miss an episode of Find Your Dream Job. Subscribe to our free podcast newsletter. You'll get information about our guests and transcripts of every show. Go to maxlist.org/newsletters. Again, that's maxlist.org/newsletters. Next week, our guest will be Melanie Dam. She's a recruitment consultant at the Equitable Hiring Group. Her company helps nonprofits and impact-driven companies hire. Sometimes you have to take a paycheck job in order to pay your bills. But over the course of a career, you will also want to do work that has meaning. Join us next Wednesday when Melanie Dam and I talk about how to find a job that matters to you. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job. This show is produced by Max List. Susan Thornton Huff schedules our guests and writes our newsletter. Lisa Kislenberry Anderson manages our social media. Our sound engineer is Matt Fiorillo. Ryan Morrison at Podfly Productions edits the show. Dawn Mole creates our transcripts, and our music is by Freddie Trujillo. This is Mac Pritchard. See you next week.